the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
Guy that I'm not really sure they want to play in crunch time, or really just in any meaningful minutes. So they really kind of have a lack of options. So you have a narrow rotation, and really it's only a 7-man rotation for the most part, unless you want to throw Boswell in for some first half minutes.
Yeah. Switching to football here, Matt. Do you think the Vols will prove to be correct or incorrect in how they went about the portal in 25?
I would lean towards correct, only because I think as a whole, there really weren't great players in the portal this year. I think a lot of people expected more to be in there, like higher quality guys. But it felt like a lot of teams kept their best players like in-house, which I think is good for the sport overall. Mm-hmm. And I think you can only use the portal to kind of supplement your roster. You can't live and die by it. Like some teams, I think, try to do. Your best programs are going to be the ones that develop their high school kids. And I think Tennessee is trying to do that. I would like to have seen them be a little bit more aggressive, I guess, probably. But I just don't know how many like high-end caliber SEC players there were in there to get, and you just get in a bidding war with other teams for those. So they at least got addressed, I think, most of their needs. But I don't want to be a program that relies on the portal as heavily as some others do that you see every year. Like Florida State's probably the worst example of a team that went portal heavy, and it kind of blew up in their face.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But it's also like if you're a team like Ole Miss, there's not the in-state players in Mississippi. You're not going to be like, there's no history. You look at, Ole Miss has never won the SEC. Like, it's just a very different type of standard. So for Lane Kiffin, who has already been, I think, the most successful coach at Ole Miss in a very, very long time, he raised the bar so high. But he has to live in the portal if you want to compete with the big boys. They were still 15th, I think, in this 24/7 top 15 class for 25, but that hasn't been the norm to this point. But they have to be creative. Tennessee has to be creative in how they recruit, because the state of Tennessee does not have the kind of players that Georgia has, that Texas has. You go through their classes. I went through the 25 one the other day, Matt, and it's like Texas has 20 kids of their 27, 26, the class 25. And most of those are blue chippers. Like Georgia, when you look at their class, it's like 20 of their 25 to 26 are in-state guys. Like, they can just lock down their borders and walk into a top 5 class. Tennessee doesn't have that. And I think that's something that fans have to keep in mind with where Tennessee can realistically go in terms of yearly recruiting rankings, is that there aren't a lot of Trey Smiths in the state, unfortunately, and you have to be creative. And thankfully, North Carolina exists because Tennessee has benefited greatly over the last 4 years from really living in North Carolina, and also Georgia. Obviously, they win their battles in Georgia year in year. They've gotten the number 1 receiver in the state of Georgia back-to-back years in Travis Smith and Mike Matthews. So they've had success there too. But I think in the portal question, the only gripe I really have is that it felt like they were caught off guard at receiver. And the problem with that is you knew Brew was gone and you knew Thornton was gone. And I wrote about it this week. Dante Thornton is your biggest loss, I think, this offseason. He led all of college receivers in reception yards per catch at 25.4. He basically bailed you out in the Vanderbilt game where it was getting ugly in a hurry. He has 3 catches, 2 touchdowns, one's an 86-yarder. If you go through this season, there are 3 losses. It's the 3 games that Dante Thornton didn't do anything in. He had 0 catches against Georgia. He had 1 catch for 14 yards against Ohio State. He had 1 catch for 40 yards against Arkansas, and it didn't go for 6. He had a gigantic catch in the Alabama game. You just go up and down the list of Thornton was your only receiver that scared opposing defenses last year, and you knew he and Brew were gone. So even if Laycock and some of these other guys, Nimrod, whoever, caught you by surprise that they were departing, you can replace those guys with the guys who are coming in, and just the development of Braylon Staley and Mike Matthews and guys like that. You had to have a plan of, like, we need just one. Like, I just think with what you saw from Chris Brazzell this past year, to just pencil in Brazzell as a key guy, as your key upperclassman, I think is a bold move. It doesn't mean it can't happen, but the difference with him and Thornton, where I've seen that comparison a lot, is Thornton was coming on down the stretch in 23. Like Thornton settled in at the outside spot, and Thornton was thriving. Like he got hurt on a touchdown. Like his season ended on a big play touchdown against Mizzou. Brazzell, it wasn't going the wrong way down the stretch. It wasn't like Brazzell was comfortable in Tennessee's scheme down the stretch. So I don't really like that comparison because I think Thornton, I bought a lot more stock in year 2 than Brazzell. But you didn't need to go get Ryan Williams or Carnell Tate. You just needed Dane Key, like who was averaging like 15 yards. You just needed someone who was a vet who I understand you might be overpaying a little bit to bring in, but you just needed someone consistent to take the pressure off Mike and Braylon and company. Just one. You don't need a big, like just a go-to guy where you break the bank for them, but they should have just zeroed in on somebody like that to just lock in and be like, look, it's not going to be flashy. You're not going to be a superstar. We don't need Zachariah Branch. We just need competence that is a sure thing on the outside to take some pressure off our young guys. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's very fair because you don't have any returning production there. I mean, you just have none. Your receivers were very underwhelming last year anyway. So you got to figure out why that is. And like you said, you just needed some guys who at least had shown a little bit of production. I think back to Josh Heupel's first year, and you had Javonte Payton and Bayless Jones, two guys who had really good numbers on that season, and two guys who weren't super productive in their previous stops, but at least had some experience. So yeah, the Brazzell, it was really disappointing last year. For being honest, I think I expected a lot more out of him. Maybe he makes that year 2 jump that Thornton kind of did. And I guess Jalen Hyatt did, but you can't expect anything close to that. But yeah, they don't have, and especially with Nico coming back, like you should have been able to lure somebody else because that even though Nico wasn't this, Heisman finalist world beater that I think a lot of people, even outside Tennessee, expected, that still should be a really good selling point. And there's still a whole lot of upside with Nico and in Heupel's scheme. So they probably, I mean, the more I think about it, they probably needed another, because they got the cat. I don't follow recruiting a ton. So the kid that went to Bama, that was
Amari Jefferson. Yeah.
But he didn't even play.
He didn't play. He had his surgery.
You don't know what he's going to be. So I do think it would have been nice to have added at least a starter level receiver.
Yeah, and I think that's just all. Like Isaiah Horton went to Oakland. That's someone who ended up at Bama from Miami, but like just somebody like that. You just needed someone consistent. I mean, Georgia got 2 with Noah Thomas and Zachariah Branch, and also flooded with their freshman class of 5 receivers. I think 4 of which were blue chippers. So I don't know. We'll see if they end up being correct there, but my gut is it's just way too much pressure on these young receivers to fix group. Kind of leads in my next question for you, Matt. Gut feeling right now. Do you think the offense will get back into the top 10 in scoring nationally in 25?
Jeez. Top 10, I'll say no.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.